Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Today we are back again with another 30 days of thought as I struggle through this process. It is difficult. I want you to be aware that if you're having difficulty through this process, you're not alone. It's not easy to write down one's thoughts. It's not easy to keep a commitment to read, to think, to write, to develop, to speak, to let go, to listen, to hear what is unsaid, to watch them. As you may be able to tell, I'm right out of bed. Got to get this done. Just face the challenge, right? As quickly as possible. So that learning from our last 30 days of thought, I don't procrastinate, as procrastination is the only true death. Today, we're talking about can't read minds, why this process has been helpful to me is outside of building discipline or developing constructive habits of thinking and planning and sharing with you. I'm always I'm always able to grow into a greater awareness. There's a level of humility when I'm not quickly just agreeing with what I had said in the past. So there's value there. Maybe something pops out to you that helps you in your work life, your personal life. So let's talk about can't read minds. And then I'll share some of my thoughts today or, yeah, on thoughts of old. So here we go. Can't read minds. To assume is to make an ass out of you and me. The awareness of this perception suggests that I cannot read minds. All I can have is my truth and the trust I may ascertain from others in times of quiet contemplation. I'm lying on my back, staring blankly into space with your favorite face staring back at mine. The times we had and days we lost due to miscommunication plague me like something foul. It is moments like this when reflection and harsh contemplation remind me of why you'd say, don't assume. It only makes an ass out of you and me. I'm reminded of the times I spoke and didn't intend to listen. The arguments founded on my ignorance and lack of empathy for all those times. And lack of empathy for all those times, I'm here to tell you I'm sorry. Sorry could never be enough, but it must still be said in turn for my behavior. I want to dive deep into a new course of action, that of listening to ask questions leads to all the answers from within. After my mistakes, I have taken ownership and invested in self knowledge of what must be. What must be is to listen, for I cannot read minds. Living life loosely and speeding to every next level caught me up in the throes of narcissisms by being present or listening whilst in the quote stew. The stew is defined as a melting pot of self absorption, vanity, intoxication, and self importance. Without realizing my wrongs, I pulled you and everyone into my vortex of selfishness, and only now do I realize I can't read minds. The hurt I cast on you, your friends, and those around us makes me feel uncomfortable, but I must realize my woes if they are ever to not be in vain. From this, I can and will learn to be a better man. And with that, I promise that I know now and forever I can't read minds. Who am I talking to? I think, well, I wrote here, talking to my better self, my best self, my potential. If I, at the time, I know I'm talking. Yeah, I may simultaneously be talking to my best self, my potential. It's so eerie. I was just reading chapter 2 of Beyond Order this morning, which I don't recall I haven't memorized the chapter yet. Something about, it's all about potential. It's not just we're not just what is, we're what could be. So I'm not just talking about my potential, my best self. I know I'm talking about my enemies, people that I've collected throughout my life that I've let down, that I've hurt. I think about these people, even if I don't consider them an enemy, if they consider me their enemy, you know, that's all. Like, what could I do? I don't want to. I'm not going to react to that and make them my enemy. I can forgive them for that's ironic because how am I going to forgive them? Or what's the value in forgiving them if they're mad at me for doing something bad to them? That's not the right way to look at it. Maybe I could forgive how they relate to me after I've related to them in that way. But what if I didn't mean to hurt? It wasn't my intention. I still have to suffer for the consequences, which would be people saying, screw you. Now, rather than just jump to forgive, maybe I've got to listen first and understand what it is. Because how do you forgive someone that's mad at you for for a right reason? That doesn't make any sense. Maybe I've got to listen to them. I've got to try to understand what they're saying. These critics, these enemies, these antagonists. I think it's easy to put them in a box as, oh, they're just haters or they're just naysayers or they're just wrong. Maybe they're right about something. I I mean, if you're a fan of the show or a participant in the show, the Culture Matters podcast, you're watching me interview people. I'm practicing listening. I'm practicing study, preparation, prepare before every episode so I can ask the best questions. I'm practicing restraint as I have my own opinions and judgments I'd like to bring into the conversation. Some you see me bring them in, as the conversation is a reflection of the context of the relationship that I have with the guest. But most people on the show are strangers. I've never met them before. Maybe they've been referred by someone. Oh, you should be on the show. Or I've asked them, but most have been referred, like, oh, this would be a good show for you to be on. They don't know anything about me and anything about Culture Matters, or very little of that, because that it's fairly opaque. And it's like, all right, I'll go on that show. Sounds like a great opportunity. A podcaster. I'm gonna have a podcast. For the longest time, and even if you've listened to the show from the beginning till up to date, I've been told that I've you're participating in my growth as a person, as an interviewer, as a podcaster, as a leader, as an advisor. I say leader as someone that has responsibility, positional responsibility over those that expect them to lead, as well as influence over those that pay them for their insights and their ear. I never did listen. It's not something I learned how to do or even realized I wasn't good at until it was so clear that I wasn't listening. And there was a lot of damage that I cause a lot of damage when I don't listen. And the thing, it's funny because in the beginning here, to assume is to make an asset of you and me. The awareness of this perception suggests I cannot read minds. Somewhere along here, oh, I wrote, it's like, oh, here on my notes, we assume, humans infer and deduce. We are usually right, and that's our problem. Being right can undermine necessary actions. I was watching a interview between Carl Jung and some interviewer about intuition, the power of intuition. Much of what I do is based on intuition. And if much of what you do is based on intuition, the problem with that, if you're right a lot, then now you're biased to think you're always right. And it could be very easy to get sucked into the wake of being proven right and the desire to be right and the need to be right. And success tricks and it bends reality as more and more people agree with your rightness or your righteous. It could evolve into righteousness. The more and more people that, you don't maybe know me outside of what you think, who you think I could be or am based on your relationship with me with this podcast, you might be giving me way too much credit. In fact, the likelihood of you giving me too much credit is very high. And then that's where the likelihood of someone that doesn't resonate with me giving me too little credit is extremely high. And that's where you have your fans and your critics. So I've got to make sure not to let my fans idolize me too much or overrun them and not listen to them, as well as I've got to make sure not to just subjugate my critics or uh, I have to listen to them as much as I have to listen to my fans. The fans might not put me in a position to listen because they might just agree with everything I'm saying or most of it, or just mirror me and get excited about whatever it is I represent to them. And the critics may not let me get a word in edgewise as they yell and scream and swear. I guess the purpose of Can't Read Minds is listening benefits me on both parties. It helps me not get sucked into the stew, right? Living life loosely and speeding to every next level caught me up in the throes of narcissisms by being present or listening whilst in the stew. The stew is defined as a melting pot of self absorption, vanity, intoxication, and self importance. Yeah, being in a constant state of anxiety, running from meeting to meeting, deal to deal, interaction to interaction, kind of just high on myself. Not the formula for long term relationships. Might be fun and productive for more transient relationships, for more transactional relationships. And quite honestly, I think one could develop great success being in the stew from an economic standpoint, depending on what it is they're selling and what business they're in. But why are we doing all this for? What are we doing all this for? Why are we doing it? That's the question. It's got to be, is there something deeper than just transaction, transient? Personally, I've had this desire to have relationships with people despite myself. So listening and the practice of inquiry and the practice of slowing my mind down when has helped me in social relationships. Whereas if I had it, you know, totally up to myself, I might just steamroll and fly through everything. And if you've heard me on some of these monologues, I'm talking like a million miles an hour. And that can be a bit alienating to other people if you're having a conversation with yourself and they just happen to be there. Listening and not interrupting. God, Churchill would say, don't interrupt me while I'm interrupting. Interrupting is not a great habit. Can piss off somebody with self-respect and alienate another that needs some from you, where they just, become the yes person. Asking questions to dig deeper and better understand has helped me become more self-aware and a better, even more valuable tool when if you have a powerful intuition and you match that with a powerful understanding. Oh my, amazing things can happen. I'm writing this excerpt. I'm here to tell. It is moments like this when reflection and harsh contemplation remind me of why you'd say, "Don't assume it only makes an asset of you and me." I think I'm talking to my conscience, but I could say just damn well, you know, with certainty, there's so many people that I could be saying this to face that likely would not give me the opportunity today because I've lost the they get to do what they want and not, and maybe that's what's best for them. I'm reminded of times I spoke and didn't intend to listen. The arguments founded on my ignorance and lack of empathy. For all those times, I'm here to tell you I'm sorry. Sorry can never be enough, but it must still be said in turn for my behavior. I want to dive deep into a new course of action out of listening to ask questions. So, in closing, I hope my example with the Culture Matters podcast is helpful to you as much as it's been helpful to me to slow down, practice inquiry, and uh, let loose my natural curiosity to learn and to understand people. And I want you to recognize that that's not who I've always been, or that's not a component, that's not my natural state, or uh, at least to my awareness, that's something that I've worked on. And it's a component of my personality at this point, but it's not the natural state. It's something, it's me attempting to level up and add more tools in the toolbox to be a better person, a better advisor, a better business person, a better human, and hopefully that helps you realize that when I say we can't read minds, we can in so many ways, and that's the problem, because we're not always right. So how can I increase the probability of being right, as I can include the other person in the interaction to get down to the facts, get down to the underlying assumptions that we're operating from as we perceive the facts, to figure out what the heck is going on and how can we make things better. We're doing it together. It's not just me thinking for myself and the other party. It's us thinking and relating together and growing together. And I hope that some of what I'm saying is being revealed in the Culture Matters podcast as I explore ideas and people through these interviews. And we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast. Keep reading to think, writing to develop, listening to hear what is unsaid, speaking to let go. We're on page 59 of 30 Days of Thought. Can't read minds, and we will see you next time. Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast.